So, Genesis chapter 22, Genesis chapter 17, Genesis chapter 15. Which one comes first? I hope you all say Genesis chapter 15, all right, in the order of the Bible. Genesis chapter 15, Abraham believed God and it was credited him as righteousness. That comes first before Genesis chapter 22. So when we get to the book of Romans, the Apostle Paul is saying, look, he believed God, he trusted in God. This was not dependent upon his obedience. It was credited to him as righteousness. Salvation by grace through faith. How was someone saved in the Old Testament? Just as the same as they were saved in the New Testament. And so his obedience is commended, but it was not the basis for his salvation. I love this description of Abraham getting to that point of full surrender where he is about to sacrifice his son Isaac. Now, he had to do some convincing here. I didn't think about this until I was reading about it. You know, Abraham is about 100 years old at this point, and so Isaac is probably about, he's not a 5 or 6 year old boy. Isaac is probably a few years older. He's probably 20s or 30s. And so Abraham had to do some convincing to Isaac that this is what the Lord wanted. At the very moment Abraham is tempted to think his God is demanding the sacrifice of his firstborn, the miracle child, the angel of the Lord stops him. He had most likely presumed that this God was indeed like all the other gods and demanded the sacrifice of children. This is what you do for the gods, he may have thought as he readied himself for the journey to Mount Moriah. But now, out of breath on the mountaintop, his eyes are open to the Lord, the God of Chesed, the God of covenant faithful love, who, as Ezra says, is not like the other gods. He will not demand Isaac's blood. Unlike any other god, he himself will provide the sacrifice, as he will also provide the manna, the living water, and the shoes that never wear out. Again and again, just when a multitude of characters in the Bible realize their own inadequacy, their own sin, just when they realize they have a right to expect nothing from God, they receive not simply a second chance, but they receive everything from God. A new age of trusting the Lord is born. Abraham realizes that God is a God of covenant, faithful love. The other point in the New Testament where Abraham's obedience is commended is Hebrews chapter 11. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, "Through Isaac shall your offspring be named." He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. So Abraham is commended for his obedience, but where was his faith placed? His faith was placed in the trust that God could raise the dead. That's what it means when Jesus says, Abraham saw my day and was glad. Abraham saw a picture of the death and resurrection of Christ, a prefiguring of death and resurrection through God's command to give up his only son Isaac. Abraham saw a picture of the new birth, that God can bring new birth, new spiritual birth through the miracle of the birth of his son Isaac. Abraham saw a picture of the incarnation of God sending his one and only son into the world through the miracle birth of his son Isaac. It all points to Jesus. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. Jesus says, Abraham saw my day and was glad. Abraham saw faintly a picture of what salvation was going to look like